My name is David Clarkson. If you are hearing these words, you probably need something. Maybe a reminder, a hope, or a reason to believe again in something bigger than yourself. I understand that feeling. I used to be like you. My life before was very normal. I'm a software engineer in Austin, Texas. Every day goes by with work, emails, deadlines, and a little time with family. My wife, Rachel, is a wonderful, strong, patient woman. My son, Noah, was only 4 years old at the time, always running around the house with his small toy car and a smile as bright as the morning sun. We are not rich, but we are not poor either. It can be called a lucky family. But I have to confess this. I no longer believe in God, in invisible or spiritual things. Maybe because I prayed when my mother had cancer, and she still passed away. From then on, I dismissed faith as if it were just a child's thing. I live by reason, by logic, and what can be measured. I think I have control over my life, until that day. It was a Saturday morning in July. The sky was clear, sunny, and Noah insisted on going to Lake Travis. Rachel prepared the food, and I prepared the float. Our whole family laughed and joked the whole way. No one knows what lies ahead. I was standing on the shore, watching Rachel apply sunscreen to Noah. Everything is strangely peaceful. I remember thinking, I'm really lucky. Then, in an instant, Rachel's screams tore through the air. Noah swam too far out. The waves hit so hard that the boy's lifebuoy slipped out of his hand. It struggled in panic. I rushed into the water without thinking. I just know I have to save my son. Every stroke was a blow to my heart because of fear, because of regret, because I hadn't been more careful. I managed to push Noah towards his mother, but at that moment, my legs were pulled down. A violent cramp, then an underground vortex that seemed to swallow me whole. I went up once, then was pulled back down again. I remember that feeling clearly. The air was running out. My lungs felt like they were bursting. All movement became useless. No one hears my call anymore. I was alone, in the cold, dark water. But it was at that moment, when I thought this was the end, that everything really began. And what I'm about to tell you may change the way you see the world forever. I don't know how long I was underwater. No sense of time, no awareness of the body. There was only an unusual silence. The next thing I remember, I was flying. Not the kind of flying in a dream, but a kind of detachment, light, free, as if all the gravity of the world had abandoned me. I looked down and saw myself. My body lay there, motionless, in the gray-green water of Lake Travis. People were screaming. Rachel was screaming. Someone called an ambulance. I heard it all. But I can't say anything, can't do anything. The initial feeling is confusion. Then there is peace, a kind of peace that I have never known. It's not an everything will be okay kind of thing. It's an absolute letting go. No more fear, no more expectations, no more pressure. I realized at that moment everything I thought was important, work, deadlines, unanswered emails, all became meaningless. The only thing that still makes my heart ache is the image of Rachel and Noah. They are still there, and I'm no more. Then I heard the first voice. Doesn't come from outside. It rang out from deep within my soul, clear, warm, and powerful. I'm not done yet. I turned toward the sound, and I saw him. I don't know how to describe it properly. It is not enough to call him light. Being human is not accurate, but in that moment, I knew, in a way deeper than words, that I was standing before Jesus. No need for anyone to explain. No answer needed. He stepped forward, and every part of me, even what I once called my mind, fell silent. Only awe remains, and an unconditional love, as vast as the ocean, but touching every smallest corner of my being. "You have been called," he said. I whispered, "Calling? For what? I don't understand." "You will understand." And then everything changed. It wasn't like stepping through a door, but like being swept up in a wave of light, taking me out of all concept of space or time. I no longer have a body, no more feeling in my arms or legs or breathing. I was just aware. It's life, being myself but carrying none of the burdens of this world. I stood with him in a space filled with light, but not dazzling. On the contrary, it is gentle, warm, as if each particle of light is filled with understanding. I no longer wondered where I was because every question in my mind seemed to be answered by a strange intuition. No words needed, no explanations needed. I just understand. He held out his hand. When I touched it, I felt like I was engulfed in a sea of emotions, love, peace, and something very strong, as if I was reconnected to my true self. Just then, the light around us began to move, like a curtain opening, and I saw thin strands of light intertwined, connecting from person to person, from event to event. Every small decision a person makes, even if it's just saying a kind word to a stranger, creates a ripple effect. I saw a little girl in New York give up her seat on the train to an old lady. That action led to a chain of events that 6 months later saved the life of someone on the other side of the country. I saw a man choose forgiveness over revenge, and that choice changed the future of his family. I see time not as a straight stream, but as simultaneous, overlapping layers of waves, past, present, future, all intertwined. And then I saw a brighter time, 2027. I don't know what the year holds yet, but the feeling about it is clear, decisive, as if it were an important turning point in humanity's journey. A door, and depending on how we step through, the future will either brighten or dim. I turned to God and asked, "Why am I seeing all this?" He looked at me, his eyes, unlike any eyes I had ever seen. In it are the stars, the pain and hopes of millions of people. He said, "Because I need to bring this reminder back, not to scare people, but to awaken what is dormant within them." I trembled, not because I'm afraid, but because I know my life from here on out will never be the same again. What I saw next, images of the future, of America, of humanity, would not be easy to hear. But I have to tell, because as God told me, people still have the right to choose. And that's why I'm alive. Not to tell a strange story, but to give you something that I once lost, faith. Don't be so quick to ignore what's making your heart flutter when you hear these words, because maybe you too are called, not to change the whole world, but just to change one small thing today. But who knows? That small thing could be the first link to a great miracle. I told you about the moment I met God, about the light feeling of being freed from all fear and fatigue. But that's just the beginning. What happened next was what truly changed me forever. After I was led into that space of light, where everything was filled with peace, God told me that He would show me what was about to happen. It's not for me to worry, but let me understand clearly. Every human action today, no matter how small, carries a greater consequence than we think. And if we don't wake up, the world we love will fall into an irreversible turn. I remember very clearly the way the light around me moved. It didn't disappear. It just gradually changed color, from warm ivory white to light gray, then gradually darker like an approaching storm cloud. I stood there, next to God, looking down at the world as if from an invisible space station. Everything appears clearly like a vivid picture: cities, people, energy flows moving back and forth between countries. And then I saw 2027. At first, I didn't understand what made that year special, But the feeling was clear. Something very important, very decisive was about to happen. A knot, a turn. The Lord told me, this is the year of choice. I saw America, my homeland, boiling. Not because of gun war, but because of division. People stand on both sides of the battle lines of opinions, beliefs, skin color, and class. No one listens to each other anymore. Conversations turned into arguments. People who were once friends turned away because of different opinions. I saw protests. Some were peaceful, but some were violent. I see politicians on television shouting slogans, but their eyes are empty. They no longer carry hope. They just know what makes them stand out on social media. And what hurts me the most is the eyes of young people. I see young people sitting alone in a room, phone in hand, eyes glued to the screen, but their hearts are empty. They are constantly connected, but completely isolated. They don't know who they are without likes, comments, or shares. There was a boy about 17 years old. I don't know why I saw him, but I knew he had lost his father in the pandemic, and now his mother had to work 3 jobs to support them both. She sat there, in the dark, thinking about ending her life. I wanted to shout to her, "You are not alone. You are more precious than you think." But I'm just an observer. Then I saw technology, developing to a level no one could have imagined. There are drones flying like birds around the city, checking body temperature, monitoring facial expressions. People wear smart glasses, using their eyes to manipulate everything. Cash gradually disappears, replaced by a digital transaction system via a chip under the skin. At first, people thought, how convenient. But then, when someone dissented, their account was frozen. They cannot buy food, cannot pay hospital bills. One click, and a person can be removed from the system. God looked at me. His eyes were stern but not cold. He said, "Freedom is not lost at once. It is eroded little by little as people exchange it for comfort." I see the church. Some churches are silent because of fear. Others are busy making appearances. But in the midst of it, I saw small groups of people praying in the woods, in basements, in bedrooms, and where they stood, light seemed to flare up. They didn't have a microphone or a stage, but their prayers echoed farther than any sermon I'd ever heard. Suddenly, I saw violent movements in nature. California was shaken by an earthquake, not a small one, but a huge tremor that caused the entire coast to collapse. I saw a Category 5 storm hitting Florida, roofs flying up like pieces of paper. To the north, wildfires burned hundreds of miles of forest in Oregon. It all happened consecutively, as if the earth was also shouting, "Enough!" I turned to God and asked, "Why are things so bad?" He did not answer with words, but showed me. Every selfish choice, every insensitive action, every time we stay silent in the face of something wrong, is a stone placed on the path leading to this place. I didn't dare turn away. I see children having to choose between meals and dreams. I see elderly people quietly dying in loneliness. I see people who once believed now have lost all hope because they think there is nothing left to believe in. But then, I saw something else. I saw small rays of light appearing everywhere. There was a boy in Ohio who put down his phone and knelt down to pray. A single mother in New Mexico sings hymns at her child's bedside every night. A group of students in Georgia decided to gather to read the Bible even though no one was leading them. And in those places, light spread like fire through straw. God said, "This is the fire of awakening, small but real. If they hold fast, it will burn away the darkness." I burst into tears, not because of sadness, but because I see, despite all the gloom that is coming, there is still hope. But that hope is not a miracle falling from the sky. It lives in every small choice. Forgiveness instead of hatred. Courage to speak the truth even when misunderstood. Sit next to someone when they need someone to listen. God turned to me. He said, "I am not seeing this to scare people, but to remind people everything can change if they return to true love." I get it. The world doesn't need a hero. It takes every person who chooses to live authentically, every day. As the light began to fade, I heard God's voice one last time before I was taken back to earth. He said, "Remember that year, 2027, because it will start everything. But nothing is destiny. Every soul has the right to choose its own path." I opened my eyes, sat up in the hospital, and knew I had returned not to live my old life again, but to live a life with purpose, to tell you what I had seen and hope you would be a part of that light. All it takes is a ray of light to push back the darkness. Maybe that ray of light is you. I know what I share may sound like a sci-fi movie, but I'm not here to convince you with arguments. I'm just telling what I saw, what I felt deep in my soul, because when you experience death, then come back, you can no longer live the same. You can't. I told you about the visions of 2027, about division, about technology overcoming humanity, about nature angry. But in the midst of that darkness, I saw things so beautiful that they made my heart tremble. I have seen people who light up hope, not with big speeches or great actions, but just by being faithful in the smallest things. I saw a group of young people kneeling and praying in the park. No stage, no lights. They don't ask for anything for themselves. They just whispered, "May God heal this country." And I saw light spreading from where they sat, gentle as a breeze, but strong enough to push back the darkness around them. I see parents who were previously only busy with business suddenly return to spending time in the evening reading the Bible with their children, not because they are afraid of the future, but because they begin to remember they once had faith. I see people who once doubted God, who once left the church, who once lived in addiction, now walk into small rooms where people pray. They are not judged, but embraced, and they burst into tears like a child. I also saw miracles, not performances. It's a real miracle. A woman who had been paralyzed for 8 years sat quietly at a prayer meeting in Ohio. A young girl placed her hand on her leg and said simply, "God loves you." There was no thunderclap or blinding light, but she stood up, and the whole room, silent for a moment, then burst into tears and singing. God told me, this is the wave of awakening. Not everyone can see it, but whoever is willing can touch it. And I believe that with everything I have. I also see opposition from the government, from people who don't understand, from people who used to be religious but are now afraid of change. They made laws limiting public prayers. They arrested those who preached without a license. They banned the media from reporting on strange phenomena that are happening because it cannot be explained scientifically. I saw the pastors being taken away in silence. I saw the church was closed for a violation of community safety. I see social media platforms deleting prayer posts, warning accounts, blocking sharing because they are considered inciting mob psychology. But I also saw a miracle. When they banned one place, another place lit up. When they closed the doors of the church, in the woods, in the warehouse, in the basement, small groups lit the fire of faith. There was no orchestra, no pulpit, but the palpable presence of God. You can feel it, like electricity in the air. God told me, when darkness approaches, true light shines most clearly. And I remember that sentence word for word because later, when I returned, it was those words that kept me standing in the midst of the storm. I also see family as a front. Some homes are broken because one person believes and one person doesn't. There are siblings who quarrel, not because of money, but because of faith. I saw a girl whose parents kicked her out of the house because she chose to pray in a group, but she is not resentful. She just quietly texted back, "I love my parents, and I will still pray for them." I see other families, once cold, now sitting around dinner, put down the phone, hold hands. They talk about blessings. They tell each other about the little kindnesses they have done during the day. And there, no matter what is out there, they remain safe. God showed me this truth. The battle is not in politics. It is not in the media. It is not in technology. The real battle is in people's hearts. Each person will have to choose, believe it or not, forgive or not, pray or give up. I see people called to do great things, heal, teach, lead the community. But I also see people who are called to do only one thing, love. An old man in rural Georgia who lived alone wrote a note of encouragement every day and put it in his neighbor's mailbox. They don't know who wrote it, but thanks to him, a young mother did not commit suicide that day. When I asked God, what keeps the light remaining in this world? He just smiled and said, love. Even if it's just a speck of dust, it's still enough to change the direction of a wind. I don't say any of this to make you feel scared or to act hastily. I just want you to know, you matter. You are not invisible. You are not as small as you thought. And no matter where you stand, in doubt, in despair, in guilt, you are loved. You can still start over. It could be that by calling someone you have cut off contact, maybe by praying for the first time in years. Maybe it's just putting your hand on your heart and saying, Lord, if you still hear, I'm ready. That's not weakness. That's real power. I have seen a whole world in darkness and have also seen small rays of light shining in people's hearts. Now I'm back, not to threaten, nor to create a movement. I just hope you don't forget, you can be one of those rays of light. And sometimes, just a ray of light is enough to start a new day. I didn't wake up immediately after all those miracles. Before returning to life, God showed me one last thing. He took me to a very familiar place, my home. I saw Rachel standing in the kitchen, holding a photo of me, tears silently falling down her cheeks. Noah sat on the floor, hugging my old shirt that he used to wear when playing with his children. There was no sound in that scene, but I felt it all. Every nostalgia, every unspoken question. Then I saw my own funeral. People came in large numbers. There are also people I used to work with, neighbors, relatives. Someone was saying a few words about my life, about being a good husband and a loving father. But amid the shared words, I felt something quieter. Confusion. A disappointment that no lecture can alleviate. I heard in their hearts the question that I myself had carried for a long time. If God loves, why did this happen? I turned to God. He looked at me, gently but seriously. He said, I will return, but it will not be easy. And then I felt myself falling, as if falling out of that light, falling quickly and deeply into a darker, heavier, and colder place. I opened my eyes to the sound of machines beeping next to me. Rachel sat there, holding my hand tightly. She hasn't left my bed for days. When I whispered her name, Rachel froze, then burst into tears. Doctors call it a miracle. They said I stopped breathing for nearly 20 minutes, that no one could explain how I came back. Alert, no brain damage, no amnesia. But I know the reason. I know I have to say what I have seen, heard, and felt. Not everyone believes me. Some people said I was hallucinating. Some people smiled politely, then ducked behind their backs. Even friends in the church kept their distance. I used to feel lonely in my own mission, but God foretold it. He warned me, faith is not easy, but it is worth it. What touched me most was seeing Noah grow up, strong, full of love and faith. One time, I saw a boy reading the Bible to his classmates. When asked why, Noah simply replied, because my father met God, and I want others to know that too. In that moment, I understood more clearly than ever. Sometimes, we don't come back for ourselves, but for the next generation, for those who will continue the light when I am gone. And if you hear this story today, perhaps you are also a part of that light.